Greetings, Matthews. This is Mrs. Mounts, and we are continuing with some different content with triangles, and we are actually going to be doing some pre-calc today. It's so exciting. Some upper level math here today. We'll be talking about sine, cosine, and tangent. But first, your favorite part. All right, I'll get my screen ready here. All right, there I am. Okay, so you have your notes. You're going to notice that this is pronounced sine. Now, we've used just the first three letters, S-I-N, so that's not sin, but it is pronounced sine with a long I. This is going to represent cosine, and we'll use C-O-S. And then the other one is called tangent, T-A-N. All right, so we're going to go on the inside here now. And on the right-hand side, there's a reason why we have these initials here. We pronounce it SOHCAHTOA. And we'll probably have this on the board so we have a visual of it so that you know exactly what you have to divide on each of these trig functions. So this represents sine, and sine is opposite divided by the hypotenuse. Now we definitely know what the hypotenuse is, just getting done with working with the Pythagorean theorem. This is cosine, and this is adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. And then our last one, tangent, we're just going to go T-A-N, and that's going to be the opposite divided by the adjacent. Okay, so we'll go through that more, definitely a lot of practice so you know where to find those sides. So the first thing we're going to do is find the missing angle. Okay, so here we have a right triangle. Well, we have the three sides, and we know that this would be a right triangle. 6 squared is 36, plus 8 squared, 64, gives us 10 squared, which is 100. So we know that that's a right triangle. But we don't know what those measurements of those angles are. But we can use trigonometry to help us find that. So this first one says, hey, we want you to find the sine of A. So they want us to find the angle here, the angle measurement. So I'm going to definitely put an arc there. And remember, looking across here on your paper, it's opposite divided by the hypotenuse. The opposite of this angle, I'm going to draw an arrow here, this would be considered the opposite of angle A. And we already know what the hypotenuse is. I can definitely label that. We know that it's always the longest side of the triangle, and it is opposite the 90-degree angle. So it gives us a fraction. Opposite, which is 6, over the hypotenuse, which is 10. That's how easy these are to set up. Now we're going to have to do a little bit of calculation, so definitely have your calculator ready. We're going to learn some new keys today. We need to solve for A. So we would divide by sine. And let's do this here first. 6 divided by 10 is 0.6. We definitely will use decimals here, okay? Kind of forgot to do that for you. But 6 divided by 10 is 0.6. So I'm going to divide 0.6 by sine. Okay, well, we really can't do that on the calculator because we don't know what the degree is. So what ends up happening, we are going to take that 0.6 and we're going to multiply by the inverse of sine, which is, looks like this, sine with a -1. Now you're going to notice that we do have that key. It's right here. There's the sine key, and look at right above it, it says sine -1. That just means the inverse of sine. So here's how we're going to type it in. So I'm going to turn my calculator on. So this just takes a little bit of practice to get used to. Okay, how do we type this in? So we're going to hit sine, or second, and sine. Okay, so I'm going to put that here, second and sine. That gives us sine -1. You can see that on the calculator. Then it gives us this parenthesis where we will put in 0.6, and then I'm going to close it up. Now, when I hit enter, that's going to give me the degree of that angle. Okay. And look it's probably not going to be nice and neat. Let's just go ahead to we'll round to 1 decimal place. So I look at the 8, look after the 8. If it's 5 or more, this is going to change. So it's going to be 36.9 degrees. I'm going to put a little degree sign. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. 36.9 degrees. Now the cool thing is, because we know that a triangle adds up to 180 degrees, and really these two angles have to equal 90, right? Because we already have 90 here. I'm going to take 90 and subtract 36.9. And I get that that other angle is 53.1. So now we have all the information on this right triangle. We know the measurements of the sides, and we know what each of those angle measurements are. Okay, so let's take a look at cosine. Okay, we're just going to find cosine A here. Okay, and your worksheet should be okay. We're just finding one. We're not finding two different ones. All right, so cosine says that we are going to take adjacent over the divide by the hypotenuse. So again, I'm going to mark angle A. Now this time the adjacent angle, obviously this is the hypotenuse, so I'm going to go ahead and label that. So adjacent means it's the other side that's attached with the hypotenuse. So I'm going to label this. This is the adjacent angle. Now over here would be opposite, but we want adjacent divided by hypotenuse. 16 divided by 20. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that on my calculator. 16 divided by 20, 0.8. Well, again, I have to solve for A. So I'm going to divide by cosine. And because we're dividing by cosine, that means the same thing as timesing by the inverse. So I'm going to take 0.8 and I'll end up timesing it by cosine of -1. But again, how do we type that in? Well, we have to type this in first. Okay, so second cosine. Second cosine. There's my cosine -1. And then I type in 0.8. Okay, let's see what this one is going to be. Okay, 36.9. Okay, again, we'll just round to 1 decimal place. Now, it actually ended up being the same answers as the first one. Okay, and probably you can see why. These are similar triangles. 6 times 2 is 12, 10 times 2 is 20, 8 times 2 is 16. All right, so cool, it should be the same. All right, 36.9 degrees, and we know that other one is 53.1. But this time we just use cosine to find the answer instead of using sine. Let's check out tangent. Tangent, if you look over on the side here, it's opposite divided by adjacent. Okay, so let's label everything here. We know this is the hypotenuse. We know this is opposite. And we know this is adjacent. Opposite, 15, divided by adjacent, which is 20. Okay, so I'll take 15 divided by 20. Thank goodness for calculator. I used to have to look all this up in a chart. We didn't have calculators, but now that we have calculators, it's amazing. Okay, that equals 0.75. So to solve for A measurement, I'm going to divide by tan. So dividing by tan is the same thing as multiplying by its inverse. I'm going to hit second tan. That gives me tan to the -1. second, tan, and then I'll type in 0.75. All right, let's see what this one turns up to be. Okay, 36.9. All right, well, they all ended up being the same thing, so they must have all been similar triangles, but we just used different trig to find that missing angle A. 36.9, and we know this is 53.1. All right, so that is how you find an angle. I'm going to do a separate video on how you find missing sides.